Hello there everyone. Today I want to show you how to make this Wirework snake ring. And this is what it looks like. So you have your head with the eyes and then wrapping around your finger. And you can obviously decide to do it more or less times. This is just what I'm going to show you. And I'm going to show you how to make the ring that I just showed you, but I just want to show you a few other variations that I've used the snakes for, because basically I'm going to show you how to make the snake and you can do loads of different things with it. So here's another one. It's just a different type of ring that I made. It just wraps around once, but you have it swirling a lot more on each side. And then that'll sit on a finger like that. So those two different variations, but the actual basic snake is exactly the same. You just make a different shape with it. And those are two variations of rings that I've made. But like I said, I'm going to show you how to make the basic snake so you can use it for anything you can think of. So I've also used it to make this bracelet, where again the snake is exactly the same, the basic snake. But I've just, instead of making it into a ring, I've just made them different shapes and then wrapped them together to form the bracelet. So that's another option. And then the last piece I've made with the same basic snake is this necklace. As you can see again, same principle. I've made the snakes individually and then wrapped them together, put them on a frame, and then I've incorporated some micro macrame into it as well, for the snakes on the bottom and for up the sides. So that is just a few different things that I've made with the same basic snake, just to give you some ideas of what you can do with it. Because like I said, I'm going to show you how to do the ring, but you can make any form of shape with it, so you can use it for anything else as well, really. So if you want to learn how to do this, then keep watching. Now these are the things that you'll need. You'll need a couple of pliers, a wire cutter to obviously cut your wire, and then you'll need a flat nose plier. And then for the wire, in this case I'll be using 3 different gauges. The first one is a 0.25, which is roughly about a 28 gauge, and that's quite fine, so that's what we'll be wrapping with. And then you'll need a 0.4mm, which is a 26 gauge, and then finally we need a 0.6mm, which is a 22 gauge. And then you'll need 1 bead per snake. In this case, this is a purple coated pyrite gemstone, but you need a teardrop shape, but that's also a bit flat. It can be a bit puffy in that, but just not a complete rounded teardrop. It needs to be a bit flat. And then in this case I have the drill hole going across the top. So this is the type of bead you need. And then get your things together and then let's get started. So the first thing that I suggest you do is get all your wires ready, so you have them ready to start making the snake. So to start off with, I'm going to grab the 0.4mm wire, and what we're going to do with this, we're not going to use it as it is. What we're going to do is twist it, so you end up with something like this. And all this is, it's 2 lengths of 0.4 twisted together. So it's nothing fancy, just that. And if you don't know how to do that, I do have a video on how to twist wire, so I'll link that at the bottom in the description box. So the length that you need of this twisted wire is, after it's been twisted, you need a length of about 65 to 70 centimeters long. So when you get your twisted wire ready, the other wire that you want to get ready is your 0.6mm wire. And what you want to do is cut off 2 lengths of this. So you have 2 separate lengths, and they need to be roughly about 35 centimeters each. Obviously it all depends on how large you're making the snake. If you're making it like a ring that wraps around a few times, you'll need it about this length. If you're making it for different purposes, you might get away with being quite a lot shorter. But for the ring, I would say roughly about this length. And the reason that we're having these lengths to be about 35 centimeters and the twisted wire is going to be pretty much double that is because the twisted wire is going to be folded over. So get these wires together, get them ready, and then I'll show you how we start. So to start making our snake, the way that we start is we actually start from the head and work our way down the body to the tail. So to do that, the first thing you want to get out is your twisted wire. So your long length of twisted wire. And what you want to do is roughly find the middle. So put the two ends together and then just gently pull up to find the middle. Like so. So I know roughly where that is. And then get your flat nose pliers out and then just place them just where you think the middle is. Like so. And then all you want to do is put in a little bend, like a sharp corner bend. Like so. So that's why you just need to use your pliers for that, so you get a nicer bend in that corner. So we now have our twisted wire completely ready to start working with. And then you want to get out your 0.25mm wire, because this is what we're going to be weaving with, because it's so fine. It gives it a really nice delicate look and gives it a bit of texture, but not too bulky. And what I normally do with this ring, I try and do it as often as I can when I make anything, but I leave my wire on the reel just because it's hard to really know how much you're going to need when you wrap with your wire. So if you can, I always find it's best to leave it on there. And then we need to attach the 0.25 wire to our twisted wire. So I take it behind, like so. And then we need to coil it a few times to be able to attach it. So like I said, I have my twisted wire where I made the little bend, which is going to be the tip of the head, and then I have a 0.25 wire lying behind it. And I usually start wrapping on this side. It doesn't matter, you can do it on the other side, whatever suits you best. But I have my wire coming from here, from the reel, and then my tail on this side. And you need to leave a decent tail. I'll probably say 20 to 30 centimeters. Rather a little bit too much because you can always cut it off. And then we need to attach this 0.25 wire. So the way that I do that is you want to wrap it around one side to basically attach it so we can start wrapping further. And all you do is just wrap it around a few times. So coiling it around the twisted wire. And make sure that you get your coils nice and tight, as close as you can get them. Like so, and basically your wire is now attached. So now that we have the 0.25 wire attached to the twisted wire, and you have your tail still coming out this way, so now it's attached enough so we can continue working with it. And then what you want to do is just continue wrapping and coiling around the twisted wire for a while. And at this point you can still move the coil up and down on the twisted wire, but you want to kind of find out where you want it to lie, because once you twisted, you coiled some more onto it, it's going to end up kind of staying where you put it. because obviously it's untwisted wire, so it'll make it stay once you keep coiling. So make sure you have it where you want it to be, and then all you do is you coil down the side for probably roughly maybe about a centimetre or so. For now, you can always coil extra afterwards. It's just to get it nice and secure so it stops moving around. Remember, make sure you get your coils nice and tight. So I've now wrapped a bit further down the side, roughly about a centimetre or so, just for now, and make sure that all the coils are nice and tight. So what we need to do now is add our bead. So we get that out, and then this is where you want to use your tail on the other, coming on the other side. So you grab the end of that and then decide which side you want to face upward with your bead, and then put your tail, your wire, through your bead, like so, and then pull it all the way down until it sits right here. So as you can see, that's why we did that bend, that sharp bend in the right at the beginning on the twisted wire, so we could get that nice corner to it to fit the gemstone into it. So now what we need to do is we need to start coiling down the other side. So what I like to do is I have the tail wire, that's what we're going to use for that, coming out still underneath your twisted wire. Just keep hold of that, your gemstone and your wires, and then just come up and around and pull it up. And this is going to also secure your bead in place. And just coil around your twisted wire over and over again, and push your coils nice and tight every time so you don't have any gaps to that. And this is why you need a decent length tail left on this side, because you now need to coil all the way down on this side, roughly to the bottom of your bead, just like we did on the other side. So continue with that, coil all the way down on this side, and then I'll show you how we continue. So I've continued coiling down on both sides, and you basically want to coil to a point where when you cross over your wires at the bottom to basically create a frame for the bead, you don't want to coil right to the point where your coils meet. You want there to be just a little bit of space. So that's the point that I've reached now. And now on this side, over here where my tail was, I just want to get rid of that tail because we're done using that now. So all you do is cut it really close, like so, and then I always just get my flat nose pliers and make sure the end doesn't stick out and it's not going to catch on anything, like so. So we've now gotten rid of that tail, and now to move on to create the body. So now that we've sorted out both sides of the head, we now need to get them in position to then start making the body. To do this, we're going to cross the wires over like I just showed you. Make sure that they get the shape to form the frame around the head. So just gently ease them into position. Something like this. So the wires cross over just below. And then we need to get a flat nose pliers out and then go in with the very tip and just grab the twisted wire right below where your coils end, and then we want to kink it back like so, and the same on the other side. Grab that side with the very tip of your flat nose pliers and then bend it back. And then if you need to, you can just adjust them a little bit to make sure that they stay in the shape that you want them to. So you have something like this. So as you can see, we have the frame going around the head in a nice shape, the similar shape to the actual bead, and then where the coils end, we kink the twisted wire, bend it to come straight down, and then you want to make sure you have that little space in between your two twisted wires, because we now need to fill that out with some other wires. So this is where you want to get your two lengths of the 0.6mm wire that you prepared. You want to get them ready, bring them out, get your ends to about level, and then you want to place them underneath the head of your snake. So you have two ends coming out from underneath, going straight out. And you want to make sure that you're leaving some tails on here as well, maybe about 5 centimeters or so, because we're going to be just using them at the end. And then you want to make sure that your two 0.6mm wires are laying in between your two twisted wires, and everything is laying flat right next to each other, like so. And then you just do your best to try and hold on to them so it all stays in position. And then you want to go back to your 0.25 wrapping wire and basically continue wrapping, but you want to go across all the wires now. So instead of just wrapping around the one twisted wire on the side, you just wrap across all of them, because you want to make sure that basically everything stays in place. So just wrap around 3 times is what I normally do. Don't make this too tight because everything is loose at the moment. It's quite easily pulled together or moved out of shape, which ideally you want to try and avoid. So wrap it around gently 3 times. So you now have your 0.25mm wire coming out here, above and then out this way. So now we need to just switch hands. This is going to probably be the most fiddly bit because everything is still kind of loose. But just take your time and work with it. Because what we need to start doing now is doing the actual wrap that I use on the body. So to do this, you have all your 4 wires, your 2 twisted and then the 2.6 in the middle, and you have the 3 wraps around all 4 to try and just keep them together for a bit. And now your 0.25 wire is coming above and going back underneath as if you were to do another wrap, but instead of doing all of them, we're going to only do the first 3. So we're going to ignore the top one. You're going to pull your 0.25 through there, and then just wrap around these bottom 3. So the bottom twisted and the 2 middle ones. And you're going to do that 3 times. And you still want to just, right here at the beginning, be careful not to pull your weaving wire too tight, because you want to make sure everything stays in place and that it's level. It gets easier once you've done a little bit, because then you've got more to hold on to as well, and it keeps its shape, like so. and that's a third. So again, we're coming up around the bottom 3 wires in between here, a third time coming up and around, go back underneath to do another wrap. And now, instead of going up in between there, we want to go all the way around and bring it all the way across to the other side where you have your other twisted wire, and then bring it up again. And this time we're not going to be wrapping around all 4 at the same time at any point again. It's 3 wires at a time every time, but you're just switching what side you're doing it on. So now you want to do the top 3 wires, so the top twisted and the 2 middle again. So you then come up from the top, and then you go down in between one of your middle ones and the bottom twisted. So you just grab the top 3 wires, and again make sure every time you do a wrap you make it nice and tight and push it down. Right here, the beginning is going to be the most difficult and most fiddly part. First of all, because everything is a bit loose, but also because your larger wires that's forming the body, they're still quite long, so just do it gently and slowly. Coming up again, going down. And you want to do this 3 times on this as well. So back around and down in between one last time to just catch the top 3 wires. So these 3. And just try and make sure you have your wires straightened out as best as you can. So that's 3 wraps. 3 wraps around all of them right at the beginning. Then you have 3 wraps around the bottom 3, and then you have 3 wraps around the top 3. So now I want to switch back to going around the bottom 3 again. So these 3. To do that, you just come up in between the top twisted and the middle ones. So basically it's 1 wrap around just the 2 middle wires. Push it down, and now we're back to wrapping around the bottom 3. Like so. Again, 3 times, like so. So we're now ready to go all the way around the back and come up on the top. But because we've done a few wraps now, what I like to do, and we'll be doing this throughout the whole thing, is get my flat nose pliers out and go in and basically squeeze your weave down. And you can squeeze it together as well, because this is going to really help with the strength of it and keeping everything together, and it'll make it nice and flat as well. So if it's something that you wear like a ring, it's going to make it a lot more comfortable. So we've now started off weaving the body, and what we need to do is start shaping it as well. Now quite often you'll find that when you do a wire weave, you can just do a weave and you can bend it and shape it, and you can do, but with this, because you use like your flat nose pliers to squeeze it down, that gives it more strength, so it makes it a little bit more difficult to just bend it after you weave. So I prefer to start bending, basically bending your body wires into shape and then weave when they are in the position I want them to be. So like on the ring, just up here the neck, we need to start bending. And if you want to use this neck for anything else, like I have done, like I showed you in the intro, you can obviously bend it in all sorts of shapes that you want it to be. I just recommend that you bend these wires first before you start weaving around them. So like now, I'm going to start curving these into a position that I want them to be. Something roughly like this. And basically all you do is continue to weave the same way. So now I'm coming out all the way at the top. I need to weave around the top 3 wires. So I'll come down in between the bottom twisted and the middle ones. And then you want to pull it. And then make sure to press it in so it's nice and tight. Like so. So again, back to switching wires. So we now need to weave around the bottom 3. So you come up in between the top one, top twisted, and the middle ones, and then continue down around the bottom 3 ones. Three times. Remember to wrap 3 times every time you do a set of wraps. So that's basically what you do. What I recommend that you do as you go is do a few set of wraps like this. I would do a few more, but then not too many, because when you've done say 4 or 5 sets, go in and then press your weave down so it stays in place and you secure it along the way, like so, because that will give it that strength and that makes sure that it stays basically where you want it to be. So that's all you do. You then obviously continue this throughout the whole body, either swirling it around in different shapes if that's what you want, or like this, you only do it right at the beginning and then you just basically do the rest straight, and then you just twist it around a ring mandrel at the end. So just continue working that as long as you want your snake to be, and then I'll show you what to do next. So I've continued weaving till I've reached quite a long length, so I feel like it's about long enough now that we can possibly start using a ring mandrel. And I'll just continue with the same exact weave, squeezing it down as you go, do a bit at a time, and remember, just leave these 2 ends out for now, we'll deal with them at the end. So what I'm going to do now is get my ring mandrel out. If you don't have one of them, you can use anything else round, like a marker pen or something. That's roughly maybe about your finger size. And then we'll need to start shaping it. So you grab your half finished snake, and then you want to place it on your ring mandrel. Now with this particular ring, because of the type of weave and because of the wires that we're using, say if you want to have a size N, which I'm probably going to be aiming for around there, because this is quite springy in a way. It stays in shape once you put it in shape, but while you're shaping it, it's a little bit springy. So you have to go a fair bit further down, because it's going to kind of expand a bit out, which will then end up falling to a larger size. So you just place it, and then you start shaping it around. do it nice and slowly. And then let it go. As you can see, I started up here, but it's kind of sprung out enough so that it comes down to roughly the size that I want it to be. So then you can obviously adjust it a bit to make sure that all the wraps are the same size and that it's the size that you want it to be. And it's even. Something like this, roughly. So we now have the basic ring shape in place, and all that's left to do now really is finish off the tail and then the head, but we'll start off with the tail first. So what I like to do is, you can obviously wrap the body around as many times as you want. You don't have to do it as many times as this, but what I like to do with the tail is have it come out again and just swirl around, basically like the head is doing, but the opposite way. So that gives it a bit of symmetry in a way and a bit of balance, while we're then tapering it off to finish the tail. I can show you on the one I've made that you have the head coming that way and the tail coming out the other way. So to do that, we want to start gradually shaping these wires outward. Just like I showed you in the beginning, that when you wanted to make some turns and bends, that you kind of shape the wire before you start weaving it. And then see where you've gotten to with your weave. I reach a point I need to come up through the top one and the middle ones, and then continue weaving around the bottom three. And still for now you're doing the same thing, 3 times around the bottom 3 and 3 times around the top 3, always incorporating the 2 in the middle, because we just want to make sure it gets this curve to it. And then you want to make sure you gradually curve these out more and more, so you're getting a nice curvy bend to it. And I still have my 0.25 wire attached to the reel. This is purely, I've been doing it throughout, so I'm going to do it till we finish it off. It also means less wastage. You're basically only using what you need. You're not going to have any waste. Making sure all your whole weave is pushed down so it's nice and tight. And keep bringing these around. And we are slowly getting to the point where we need to start tapering the tail to be able to finish it off. And I've done a bit more wrapping now, so I'm going to go in with flat nose pliers and just squeeze down my weave. Bend it further if you need to. We've near enough reached the point where I'm going to start tapering the tail to finish it off. So I'm just going to squeeze this last weave down as well so it's nice and secure, stays in place. And then I'm going to start tapering off the tail. And the way I do that is, you don't have to do it from a particular side, but it just really depends on where your weave is. What I like to do is I've just wrapped around 3 times around the bottom 3 wires, which includes the 2 middle ones. So now I'm going to, if I were to continue, I'm going to wrap around the top 3. So that means the top one of the 2 middle ones is going to be the middle wire of those 3. And then what you want to do is grab that middle one of the top 3, so the top one of the 2 middle ones, if that's where your next weave is going. If it was on the bottom, then it would be this, the bottom one in the middle, that's your middle wire. So just make sure you grab the middle one of the next weave. And then you get your wire cutters, and I like to just push up the wire, bend it upwards so you can get in there, and you get in as close as you can with your wire cutters, and you cut this wire off. So you now cut it off the piece, so you now got one less wire. And then because I pushed it up to get into it, you just want to push the very tip of it back down so it's not sticking up. Just use your flat nose pliers for that. Go over it with your finger if it feels fine. And then we basically just want to continue with the same weave. The only difference is we now have only one wire in the middle, but we're just going to pretend like it's the same. So instead of wrapping around 3 wires now, the top 3, it'll be the top 2. Still like normal, just wrapping around 3 times. And then what will happen is you'll get that the end of that wire will be hidden in these wraps that I'm doing now. And push it nice and close and tight. Like so. So that's 3 around the top 2. So we now need to just continue to go down, wrap around the bottom 2, just like we were doing previously with when there were 3 wires. Because we want to look at like it's just blending in and it's just tapering out. Like so. And then around the top 2 again. Yeah. So you can see it's because we have that one less wire, it's slowly just tapering in just a little bit. Now you want to make sure that you have the right bend that you want. And then we need to get rid of one more wire now. First thing I'm just going to do is push down this weave again, so it's nice and secure. And then we'll grab the last middle wire, push it up like I did before, so you can get into it. Grab your wire cutters, go in and then cut that off as close as you can get it. So that's now gone. And you just want to make sure to push down that very end that you've got left of it. Something like this. So that's again one less wire, so you're now left with the 2 outer wires, which is the 2 twisted ones that have basically been the frame throughout the whole snake. And then now you just want to wrap around both of these together. So there's no more switching between the top and the bottom now, because we're now moving towards finishing it off. Just wrap around there a few times, however many you feel like. And I like to still just push the weave down a bit so the wires stay in place, and we can squeeze it together as well, gently. like so. I'll do a few more. And just squeeze them down. Squeeze them together as well if we need to. And then I'm going to see about getting rid of one more wire. So now obviously you only have the two outer ones, so you don't have anything out on the outside to hide them. But all you do is you choose one of them. It's not a specific one, it's whatever you feel will work best. Push that up as well. And then I go in and cut that. Doesn't have to be right close, but what I like to do is kind of cut it at an angle. Like so. So you end up with an angle that goes inward. So cut that off, just make sure they're level again. And then just continue wrapping around. Keep your wrapping as nice and close and tight. As you can. And just wrap until you've passed this wire that you just cut off. That's how you're going to hide that one. And by cutting it at an angle, that helps not make it so obvious. Like so. And we now have this one left. So what I'm going to do with that is I'm going to cut it a bit shorter, but I'm going to leave maybe roughly about a centimetre or so, or a few millimetres. It doesn't have to be that much. And then what I'm going to go in, this is your twisted wire you've got left. So I'm going to go in and actually untwist the end. All the way down. So basically we separate these wires out now. Split them up. Like so. And again, you look at them and then decide which one you think is the best one to cut off. Because you now want to just cut one off first. Down close. Again, I do it at an angle. Just helps make it easier to wrap. And just make sure the end is nice and flush with the other wire. And wrap around there. Just be nice and gentle. So you cover that end up. And then you're only left with the one last wire, which is then a 0.4 on its own. So you just go in and cut off to the length that you want it to be. And you just continue just wrapping the 0.25 wire all the way to the end. And just do it gently. If you kind of lie the wire, you don't want to pull tight. That's where I normally use my finger to help it along. Like so. I've basically reached the end now. So I can go in and cut off my 0.25 wire. As close as I can get it. And if there's any tail left on that little thing sticking out, just try and flatten that down gently with your flat nose pliers. So it's not going to catch on anything. Go over it with your finger until you're happy. Like so. And if you need to just adjust it a bit, you can still do that into shape. So that's the tail finished off. So all that's left to do now is sort out the head. So we go back up to the head, and you have your 2 wires coming up from the body. That were the 2 wires you put in the centre. So that's the tails that we left in the beginning. They're the ones we're going to use now to finish it off. So you want to kind of separate them out, push them a bit to the side, and then what you'll see is where the twisted wire that you put around the head as a frame, where you started twisting it, where you started coiling it with the 0.25 wire, you just want to basically push these up. It's a pretty good measuring place. Like so. Push them up so they're just standing up fairly straight until you're happy with the position that they're in. Like so. So basically they're coming just slightly down from the very tip. And then you just push them back a little bit more, because this is basically what's going to help hold your bead in place, but also finish off in the sense that actually makes the eyes. So you have a little bit of space to work with still, and what you need to do is trim these down to a length that you're just going to have enough to make a loop. So maybe 1.5 to 2 centimeters, depending on how large your stone is as well. Rather have a bit too much, because you can always cut a bit extra off, whereas it's a bit tricky if you cut off too much. Like so. And then you want to get out some round nose pliers, and then I would say, depending how large your stone is or how large your snake in general is, that would depend on how large you want your eyes or the loop to be. Like for this, it's quite small and it's a ring, so I want my loop to be quite small. So you want to start not too far down your round nose pliers. So you put them at the end and just start looping them inwards. And then as you go, you can see it's still a bit too far up. So I'm going to then go in and cut a bit off the tip. You can just do a bit at a time until you get just the right size. Like so. And you can check pushing it down to the bead, and that looks pretty good to me. And then go to the other side. Make sure you go to the same place on your round nose plier, so the eyes are going to be the same size. Start forming your loop. Go in, cut off the very tip a bit, so you can get them even in size, but also make sure you get the loop quite rounded. Keep looping it down until the end meets back up with the wire, and then you push that one down and just see if you're happy. It's just moved a bit out of place there. I can see that's still a bit too long, so I'm just going to pull it back up a little bit and go in and cut off some more. Just do a very tiny bit at a time. And then loop it back around again and see if that fits. Yep, that works a lot better. So they're pretty even now. So they're both holding your bead in place so it doesn't flop out or anything, or flip out. It's held in place with the wire through here, but the eyes help keep it in place to not flip out in any way. Plus it works as the eyes. So that is basically the ring done then. And as you can see, because we use the twisted wire basically as a frame around the edge of the whole body, that helps give it the texture to it. You could easily just use just a non-twisted wire, regular wire. It's completely up to you. I just like the twisted wire because it gives a bit extra effect to it and a bit extra texture. So that's basically how you make the snake. And obviously this is into a ring, but you can make it any way you want it to. You can use the snake for anything else like I showed you in the intro. So what I just want to show you at the end, one last tip I just want to give you. If you want to use the snake for anything else than a ring, like I showed you, like the bracelet or something, what I recommend that you do is, like say with a bracelet, what I did is I measured out the length that I want it to be roughly, and then basically drew a frame, and then I drew in the design of the snakes first before I started making them, because I could then reference back to this and then make my snakes exactly how I wanted them to be, and then you can obviously compare and go along with the curve as you're making it. So a little tip that's easier than if you want to use the snakes for something else, so you kind of know what you're doing instead of hoping that they're going to fit. So it's just a little tip, but otherwise that's the finished snake, the ring. So I hope you enjoyed that, and thank you very much for watching. Hello there everyone. Today I want to show you how to make this micro macrame coloured leaves technique. And this is the piece that I'm working on today to show you. So as you can see, this is the result, and I've turned this one into a bracelet.